Yes, you're very welcome to another edition of Lorna Parka here on WLR. It's Tomas McCarthy here till 7 o'clock, and hope you're all keeping safe and well. Coming up over the next hour, former Waterford captain Brian Flannery will pick his 5 Déise Hurlers to watch in 2021. Adding insult to injury, Mount Sion chairman Shamie Clear on his concerns with the GAA Injury Benefit Fund. And Déise attacker Niamh Rockett will reflect on her first Camogie All-Star. So who will be the 5 Waterford hurlers to follow in 2021? Former Waterford captain and Munster Express writer Brian Flannery has taken out his crystal ball and joins me on the line now to look at the bright prospects for the year ahead. And Brian, the criteria you've laid down for this is, I suppose, hurlers that didn't play in the All-Ireland Championship for Waterford last year. In no particular order, who's the first player on your watch list?
Yeah, well, I suppose, Tomas, I was just thinking about it. I'm sure Liam Cahill and his selectors have probably sat down, over the last number of weeks or probably had a Zoom call more likely over the last number of weeks. And I'm sure they're looking at, reviewing last year where Waterford, I suppose, contested both Munster and All-Ireland finals. And I'm sure they're looking at personnel and who they can bring in that can come in and make a difference and hopefully bridge that gap to Limerick. I suppose we all probably realise that Limerick are a step ahead of everybody at the moment. But looking at it, there's definitely players who didn't play championship for Waterford last year who can, who I'd certainly be looking at as capable of coming in and, not just maybe filling out a panel at the back end of it, but could come in, make 26 and possibly have an impact on championship match day. And there's certainly a few players that come readily to mind. And I suppose the first one you'd be looking at is somebody like Shane Bennett, who wasn't involved last year at all, who has, a huge amount of ability, a lot of experience. And a player like Shane, I'm sure he must be 25 at this stage. So he's probably entering his peak years in relation to ability. And he's been part of that great minor and under-21 team that won All-Ireland. So I'm sure the lads are delighted that he's back available this year. And, he's an option, whether in attack or probably even in defence as well. I'd love to see him maybe get a run in the half-back line and, maybe alongside Caleb Lyons, he's another attack and half-back option. Although in recent years, I suppose he's probably better known at inter-county senior level anyway as I suppose a very pacey forward with great finishing ability. So look, I mean, he's absolutely a player that can come straight in and will be competing for a place on the team. And I'm surprised if he actually doesn't make his way onto a starting 15 for Waterford come championship time.
Yeah, a very versatile player, Brian, and there is a vacancy at number 6 at the moment, like Tadhg de Burka out with a cruciate knee ligament injury. Philip Mahoney retired. Is he a candidate possibly for the number 6 jersey?
Well, I don't know. I maybe perhaps Caleb Lyons at 6 and Shane Bennett maybe at 7. That might be, that might work. And I suppose in the modern game, having halfbacks with pace, who can also score, and both Caleb Lyons and Shane Bennett would certainly fill that. But it's hard to know. I suppose Waterford will probably and Liam Cahill and his team will be looking back at last year, and probably need to get one or two, options in attack, real scoring options to, as I said, to bridge that gap to Limerick. And I suppose another player who's coming back into the panel and again, a teammate of Shane's in those successful underage teams will be DJ Foran. Again, he's another player who has tons of ability, extremely good in the air, very accurate. And he's a player that can come back in and make an impact, whether it is in a starting lineup or off the bench. And again, he's 25, 26 this year. He's one of those players that, I'm sure will be looking to make an impact. You'll probably find as a player, as your career progresses, there is a window of opportunity to play senior inter-county, and there's a window of opportunity for all these players to maybe win an All-Ireland. And if you look at the backbone of that, successful minor and under 21 teams with the likes of the Bennetts and Austin Gleeson, Conor Gleeson, etc. They're all, arguably approaching their prime at this stage, 26, 25 years of age. So as I said, the window of opportunity certainly is there at the moment. And I think DJ Foran, looking at, again, his club form and his impact at various levels in recent years, he's another player that can certainly give Liam Cahill more options when it comes to, I suppose, Championship Sundays.
Yeah, certainly so, Brian. And he's an eye for goal as well. And he got that memorable goal, of course, in the All-Ireland Under-21 final against Galway in 2016. And here's a little reminder of that.
Ball breaks, good chance here for Foran. The Portlaw man is in on 20. What's on here from? Takes a shot. It's a goal! Long ball from Halsey. Onto Foran, back of the net. Direct hurling. And the big man from Portlaw wraps the net on the Kalina end. The ideal start for Waterford. And Foran is the man to deliver for.
Yeah, what a start. And I thought he was after overplaying it. I thought he was going to get caught. I thought he was going to get hooked as he threw it up. But a great finish. Took that ball from the 45 right in. Someone should have come to meet him from Galway. Didn't. Great goal, great start.
So Shane Bennett and DJ Foran, Brian, the first two players on your Waterford watch list for 2021. Who's the third?
Yeah, I think I suppose, it's been announced in recent months that Stephen O'Keefe is, stepping away for the coming season. And, for most counties, I suppose, to have an all-star quality goalkeeper step away from the team would possibly be a crisis. But I think Liam Cahill is very fortunate to have somebody of Billy Nolan's, I suppose, ability. And also, I suppose, Billy has extensive experience, with a couple of senior championship games under his belt as well. But again, similarly to Stephen O'Keefe, I think Billy Nolan is a player that has that, sort of all-star ability. And I don't see it being a drop-off in the number one jersey this year, with very likely Billy Nolan coming in to assume that role. And I suppose, look, from as a player, from his own point of view, he'll be, he sat in the wings last year, watching the Munster final and All-Ireland from the stand. He'll be anxious to stake his claim for the number one jersey and to try hold on to it. But he's, again, tons of ability, outstanding underage player. And I suppose, look, we've seen from his performances with the club, he's just a very good hurler, and he's extremely good, playing out the field for his club, Rowan Moore, as well. So I think he's a player that we could be, in 6-7 months' time, talking about as a potential candidate for honours or individual honours. And kind of reminds me maybe when Cusick stepped away, I suppose, from the Cork goal, and Anthony Nash came in his first year and actually won an All-Star. So I think Billy Nolan can have that impact, and it's I suppose reassuring, certainly from Liam Cahill's point of view, to have somebody of that ability ready to, I suppose, to step forward and assume a more prominent role.
Yeah, and a bit like Anthony Nash as well, Brian, he can get on the score sheet. And here's a clip of his point in the National League up in Mullingar against Westmeath last year.
To Shane 5. Shane gives it back to Billy Nolan. Wind assisted. He's going long. This could go all the way. Is it going to go left and wide? It's gone over the bar. What a score. Lovely bit of 1-2. Billy Nolan got 1-1 for WIT during the week. Now he's got a massive point. Lovely 1-2 with Shane 5. Shane gave it back literally from his own 20-metre line. Over the bar it goes. What a score.
Yeah, goal score and point score from the number one jersey. That's Billy Nolan of Rowan Moore. Who's the fourth player, Brian, in terms of your 5 Waterford hurlers to follow in 2021?
Yeah, well, I think in recent years, I suppose, looking at from an underage point of view, there's certainly one player that readily springs to mind, and that's young Michael Kiley from Abbeyside. He's a player, I suppose, I've noticed for a number of years, burst on the scene a few years ago, particularly with the Waterford minors, and he was that sort of player that solved all sorts of problems for the then Waterford minor manager, starting maybe in the half-back line. And I remember a couple of games where he ended up full forward and turning the tide for Waterford in close games against Tipperary up in Gaelic Grounds, I think it was. And watching him, I suppose, just before Christmas there with the Waterford under-20s, had an outstanding performance against Tipperary in that game up in Fairfield, caused havoc among the Tipperary defence. But he's a very talented player, outstanding for his club Abbeyside in the last couple of years as well. Newly onto the senior panel. But again, he's a player that I believe can go onto that Waterford senior panel and make an impact. And I'd be surprised if he doesn't, see game time, in the Waterford senior setup. But really, really good hurler. One of those players again that can play anywhere. As I said, as a minor would have been outstanding at both half back and full forward. And again, he's definitely one to watch.
Yeah, and you mentioned that performance against Tipperary, Brian, like 2-2 that night, and here's just a reminder of his first goal into the country and against Premier County.
Kiley has the ball. Is he taking on his marker? That's exactly what he's doing. The man from Ballynacorty stepping aside his marker there. Was he foul play? Answers the referee. He's still going forward. A goal chance. A goal! A brilliant finish by. That's determination written all over it. His granddad was a star in the 60s. This man is a star of the 90s. We look for a big performance from the Abbey side, man. They've got it right at the back of it. What a start doing.
Fantastic start from Kiley.
Yeah, did you think a goal like that, Brian, really put him on Liam Cahill's radar?
Yeah, absolutely, and I suppose, look, I think he has it all. Talent wise, ability, pace, finishing. I think he's certainly after catching the eye. But I think for the last few years, if you'd have asked me this question 12 months ago, he's a name that would have rolled off the lips as well. He's certainly been, I suppose, one of the most impressive young hurlers in Waterford in the last few years. And, I expect he'll have an impact, and I think that's what you're looking for. You're looking for players that can come through from underage, and that can make it onto a panel of 26 and as I said, make an impact on Championship Day. And I'd be surprised if he doesn't get his opportunity this year. Lot of good games in the last year or two under his belt, and just needs, I suppose, that little bit of experience. And in I suppose more normal times, he'd have already maybe a league campaign under his belt. So whether the lack of games might militate against him in relation to getting a championship start, I suppose, look, we'll only have to see where things fall in the next few weeks in relation to a national league, whether it'll happen or not.
Yeah, well, you certainly got the call up anyway from Liam Cahill, so hopefully those competitive games, Brian, as you mentioned, are just around the corner. And last but by no means least, Brian, who is the fifth player that you've picked?
Well, look, I suppose, you're always, I suppose, hesitant to heap too much, I suppose, expectation on young players. But I think again in the last few years, a young minor from Ballygunner, Patrick Fitzgerald, is one that I think readily comes to mind and catches the eye as a player with potentially being that little bit special. Again, very good at very dominant at underage. Even the Ballygunners' victory over Abbey side there last year, I think did he score everything or practically everything for Ballygunner in the game?
Yeah, he got 111, 1-6 from play.
111. Yeah, almost the full set for his club. But again, impressive for Waterford minors against Tipperary in the championship last year. Even though at times he was being double marked, he's minor again this year. I think he's he has that something extra about him, that little X factor that as I said, you can easily identify of that. As a player, there's definitely he has something, but still very young, and hopefully he'll get another, I suppose, minor championship under his belt this year. But certainly one to note in the diary. And as I said, I'm sure the new Waterford, his clubman, new Waterford minor manager will be hoping to, I suppose, build an attacking sectet around young Fitzgerald for this year's championship.
Looking for the run inside. The man who has it is Patrick Fitzgerald, the danger man in this Ballygunner attack going forward. Higgins stick it to his guns, taking a shot left outside, goal for Ballygunner, Patrick Fitzgerald.
So Brian Flannery's 5 Waterford hurlers to follow in 2021: Shane Bennett, DJ Foran, Billy Nolan, Michael Kiley and Patrick Fitzgerald. So former Waterford captain and Munster Express columnist Brian Flannery, thanks so much for your time today.
Cheers, Tomas.
What can Bennett to do? Cronin is there with him. Sends a lovely ball across. What can they get in here? Can they get a touch on it? It's in the back of the net. Shane Bennett has in the back of the net.
Now you're hurling. Lorna Porca with Tomas McCarthy on WLR.